is what's happening with that utterly irreconcilable with any even pretense that there's a relationship anymore between academics and athletics. All of those things need to be covered, not during the game, not in between pitches or in between free throws, but at some point needs to be covered. Print journalism and digital journalism, sports journalism, still doing a good job in that regard. I fear that we've dropped the ball, not completely, but largely, on the broadcast side, because apparently people who produce and make talent decisions on the debate shows think that 10 minutes of people screaming at each other about a half dozen different topics a day in a state of high dudgeon is better than a Jack Whitaker or Dick Schaap or Jim McKay essay on the subject, which, if well-crafted, would say more in 3 minutes than these shows say in 3 hours. I think they've largely, not completely, abandoned that responsibility. Much less 30 for 30 on ESPN, much less Outside the Lines. Most tragically, HBO Sports, once the gold standard, forget about Emmys, a room full of Peabody Awards for Ross Greenberg and everyone that he put to work on Real Sports with Bryant Gumbel, and my show, On the Record, and the way they covered the NFL on Inside the NFL, which was different than the way the other networks did it. Bomani Jones' show, most recently, and all the great sports documentaries they used to do, all of that is gone. The business model changed, and it's completely gone. And that's a tremendous loss for people who just enjoy a quality presentation. You know, sports isn't brain surgery, but it doesn't have to be brain dead either. People who enjoy a quality presentation and those who want to see the very valid issues in sports examined. Another problem here, if that's the right way to put it, is that the networks that cover sports, that bring you the games, which generally are done very, very well. The quality of the broadcasting, the quality of the production, the features, all the rest. But network TV sports is the only business I can think of where the buyer must continually flatter the seller. Here's your $1 billion or more, and if we pull a Brinks armored truck up to Park Avenue and we haven't delivered it in the proper denominations, we apologize profusely and we'll be right back. But within all of that, with all the hundreds and hundreds of hours of coverage, let's say, of the NFL, can't there be a Meet the Press style interview of Roger Goodell somewhere? You got a 6-hour Super Bowl pregame show? Can't that be there somewhere? Franchise relocations? That's a political issue, yes, but it intersects with the NFL. CTE, I talked about it. League didn't like it. I was in an emeritus role. I was less important by that time to NBC by mutual choice. And they didn't want me doing that either. But I sleep better at night because I did. I don't think that it was necessarily anyone else's role. People see their roles differently. And most of the people who are the best play-by-play announcers, including people in this room, are magnificent at what they do. But I saw my role, at least at times, as a different one. And I felt that if only 5% maybe was journalistic, if only a tiny portion of it was a well-crafted essay, then that was a nod toward the people that I valued and who influenced me growing up. Not just broadcasters, but writers. I always valued a well-turned phrase. I always valued a well-expressed thought, a grace note, a bit of elegance in the way people express themselves, but also the willingness to identify and talk about the elephants in the room. Beyond sports, and I'll make this concise, the free press is under attack. Democracy, as we have known it, is under attack. And these are not, what's happening now are not matters of small degree. They're different in kind to anything, certainly in my lifetime, and maybe in the history of the American presidency. And since networks, in many cases, are owned, they all are corporations, but in some cases, those corporations have specific financial stakes in running the gauntlet that the Trump administration will throw up against them, not just in the form of Trump's unhinged Truth Social rants and the things he says that are an affront to basic decency, forget about basic American principles, it's an affront to both, but nonetheless, his FCC intimidated ABC into refuting George Stephanopoulos. All they should have said was, George misspoke. The president, that paragon of virtue, was only found guilty of sexual assault, not rape. So we stand corrected. They didn't have to pay a $15 million ransom. And did Sherry Redstone, because she wants to effect a merger that Trump's FCC could stand in the way of, did she have to besmirch and undercut the gold standard in our lifetime of broadcast journalism, 60 Minutes? Paying $20 million in ransom to Trump is just the cost of doing business when there's billions of dollars at stake. These are ongoing assaults on the basic idea of a free press. Thomas Jefferson once said, if I should be able to, I'm paraphrasing here, if I should be able to retain only one of the amendments of the Constitution, it's the first one, the right to a free press, because that's the safeguard of democracy. And which does not mean that we are without fault. It does not mean that the legacy or mainstream media doesn't screw up from time to time or have blind spots or misplaced narratives. But if the answer to that is MAGA media, if the answer to that is Donald Trump's view of the world, which is only through a prism of what benefits him, there are no higher ideals, there are no principles at work other than what benefits him, I'll stay with where we are without correction if the correction is what Donald Trump represents. And what also has happened here is that because he is the president, to a certain extent, who he is and what he does and what is done in his name has been normalized so that responsible journalists have to pretend that there's always two sides to this. There really isn't two sides to much of what Donald Trump represents. If someone says, and the idea that you have to find somebody who will not just defend Donald Trump, but valorize it, even on CNN or wherever else, just in the name of being balanced. Look, if someone is contending that the earth is flat, in order to appear objective, you are not required to say, well, maybe it might be oblong. No, it's not. Certain things are just true. And regrettably, something that's true in America right now is that the President of the United States has absolutely no regard, and in fact has contempt for basic American principles and basic common decency. And I've heard this on occasion, I used to love Bob Costas, but then when he turned political, and of course when I did, then every good thing I did for 40 years was washed away. Now I suck. You know what? If that's what you think, and that's how you think, and you think it in defense of that guy, I wear that as a badge of honor. Just as I wear this and my ongoing connection to Syracuse University and the Newhouse School as a badge of honor. Thank you all very much.